The Witch and the Definitely Dead Detective by Sadie Brent. Chapter 19, Whispers and Shadows. Evie placed her keys on the counter of the shop and stared at the empty space behind the register. The shop was unusually quiet without the steady hum of festival-goers, their laughter, and the buzz of chatter from the reopening. The silence made the events of the last 2 days press on her like a weight she couldn't shake. Plot 236. The number circled in her thoughts like an orbiting planet, refusing to settle. Spinks padded softly along the counter, brushing against her arm. She scratched his chin absently, still lost in thought. "Lizzie, what are you trying to tell me?" she murmured, the words slipping out without realizing. "Something troubling you?" She jumped, her hand flying to her chest as James materialized in the doorway to the stockroom. His figure wavered for a moment, like smoke caught in the sunlight before solidifying. "Seriously, could you not?" she scolded, her voice high and breathless. "You're going to give me a heart attack." James chuckled, crossing his arms. "I don't know. You seem pretty tough to me, so what's on your mind?" Evie hesitated, glancing down at the counter where she'd scribbled notes earlier, 236 Mors Immatura, and then back at James. "Marcellus told me Lizzie's buried in plot 236 at the old Stony Cemetery. That number, it's the same one the Crypto Arcanum showed me. That can't be a coincidence." James's face turned serious and he stepped closer, the air around him cooling slightly. "No, it's not a coincidence." "Then what is it?" she asked, exasperated. "Because right now, it feels like this book is throwing me into the deep end with no map, no compass, and definitely no lifeguard." James smiled faintly. "The Crypto Arcanum doesn't work like that. It doesn't handhold or spoon-feed. It gives you what you need, not what you want." Evie bristled. "What I need? How is this helpful? It's cryptic and vague and ugh." She threw her hands up, pacing the length of the shop. James watched her with a patient expression. "Lizzie said the same thing when she first started working with the book. It's a guide, not a solution. And from what I understand, it only reveals its full potential when the time is right." Evie froze mid-step. "What do you mean, full potential?" He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lizzie mentioned it once. She said the Crypto Arcanum wasn't at its full power, but she never explained what that meant, and I didn't push her. She had her secrets, just like everyone else." Evie sank into a chair near the counter, her mind racing. The book wasn't at full power? What did that even mean? And why hadn't Lizzie said anything to her about it in the will or in any of the notes she'd left behind? James leaned against the counter, watching her with a thoughtful expression. "You're doing better than you think, you know," he whispered. Evie let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, really? Because I feel like I'm floundering. The book's cryptic. The town's full of potential suspects. And now there's this whole not at full power thing to worry about." James shrugged. "Welcome to the world of mysteries. It's messy and confusing, but you've got good instincts. Trust them." She looked up at him, his translucent form shimmering faintly in the shop's dim light. "I'm starting to think you might actually believe in me." "I do," he said simply. "And Lizzie did too. She wouldn't have left the book to you if she didn't." His words settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time all day, she felt a small flicker of hope. The sun was setting by the time Evie pulled into the gravel driveway of Lizzie's house. The pale purple siding glowed softly in the golden light, and the deep purple shutters cast long shadows across the windows. She stepped out of the car, Spinks jumping gracefully from the passenger seat, and stood for a moment, letting the tranquility of the river soothe her frayed nerves. The house felt like Lizzie's spirit still lingered here, not in a ghostly way, but in the way her personality had seeped into every corner of the space. From the eclectic bohemian decor to the garden bursting with late summer blooms, it was unmistakably hers. Inside, the butter-yellow kitchen was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. Evie set her bag on the counter and opened the fridge, pulling out some leftovers. She made a plate of pasta and sat at the small table by the window, watching the river as she ate. Spinks curled up on the chair across from her, his green eyes half closed but still watchful. "I think I'm losing my mind, Spinks," she said between bites. "First the book, now the cemetery plot. It's like everything's connected, but I can't see the bigger picture yet." The cat yawned, his tail flicking lazily. After dinner, she wandered through the house, her thoughts still swirling. She paused in the living room, her eyes drawn to the fireplace mantel where a small framed photo of Lizzie stood. In the picture, Lizzie was grinning, holding up a fishing rod, with a large fish dangling from the line. The river stretched out behind her, the sunlight glinting off the water. "What are you trying to tell me, Lizzie?" Evie whispered, her fingers brushing the edge of the frame. That night, Evie was back in the greenhouse. The air was thick and humid, heavy with the scent of soil and something sharp and metallic. Moonlight streamed through the glass panes above, casting eerie shadows that danced as if alive. She was searching again, her hands clawing through pots and trays, knocking over tools and plants in her desperation. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic rhythm that matched the urgency of her movements. Something shifted in the shadows, a faint whisper of movement that made her freeze. She turned, her breath catching in her throat, but the greenhouse was empty. Lavender. The scent was stronger now, wrapping around her like a ghostly embrace. It filled her senses, overpowering the other smells and making her dizzy. "What is it?" she murmured, her voice trembling. "What am I supposed to find?" But the dream offered no answers. Evie woke with a gasp, her heart racing, and her body drenched in sweat. The moonlight filtered through her bedroom window, casting long, slowly shifting shadows across the room. Spinks was sitting on the edge of the bed, his ears perked and his eyes fixed on the door. He let out a low, questioning chirp, as if asking if she was okay. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice was shaky. She ran a hand through her tangled hair and swung her legs over the side of the bed, padding barefoot to the window. The river was calm, its surface glinting in the pale light of the moon, but Evie couldn't shake the feeling that something was just out of reach, something she was supposed to understand but couldn't quite grasp. She leaned her forehead against the cool glass and closed her eyes. "Tomorrow," she murmured. "Tomorrow I'll figure it out." But as she climbed back into bed and pulled the covers around her, the faint scent of lavender lingered in the air, refusing to let her rest.